Today on the Crit House 3 series, we're joined by Dotan Saguy, a documentary photographer whose work reveals the poetry and complexity of everyday life. Dotan is known for his immersive approach to storytelling, building deep trust with his subjects to capture raw human moments. His candid black and white images have appeared in National Geographic, The Guardian, and The New York Times, and his books Venice Beach, The Last Days of a Bohemian Paradise, and Nowhere to Go But Everywhere stand as powerful testaments to communities on the edge of change. Dotan's work continues to remind us of photography's deepest purpose, to connect us to each other.
So, for those three images, what I thought, several ideas popped to my head of what kind of images I could put together. But the most relevant for me right now is the project that's kind of I'm immediately working on, which is Venice Beach, as always, but this time in color. And I think a lot of people who've seen my photography before have seen my black and white work because that's all I've published so far. I don't know. Lately, I was like, let's kind of reinvigorate my the challenge, I would say, for shooting in Venice because black and white had gotten very comfortable, and sometimes when things get a little too comfortable, you need to kind of rejigger things a little bit to make it a little more exciting. So I just kind of gave myself a challenge of shooting, kind of seeing Venice Beach through a whole new lens. When you asked me for three pictures, I was like, let's pull from this new project. And some of the pictures we're going to look at are in this new project, but I shot them a while ago when I was going through this kind of like, let's try color for a little bit phase, and then that kind of went away. And then I'm kind of just re-energized it by really fully going color. And I'd say the past couple of years I've been shooting in Venice, I've only shot color. So I've been and those projects take a while. So, I haven't published too much of that color work. But so this will be an opportunity to kind of share it a little bit. There's a lot of people that I'm very inspired by that shoot color. I mean, there's like Alex Webb and Sal Leiter. There's so many people who are known for amazing color. I would say shooting black and white was, I don't know, I was very comfortable with the monochrome. The Leica monochrome is really kind of what got me into it. Every now and then, I think what happened is, well, actually going back, now you're making me actually think about how the genesis of this, which I was not actually aware. It's true that I've always liked those photographers and been inspired by them, but every now and then what happens with Leica is there's a gap between two versions of the Leica monochrome. So there'll be typically they release the Leica monochrome version of a camera about a year late. So they'll release the color version, the regular version, and then they'll release the monochrome version about a year later. Sometimes the new camera is so compelling in terms of new features and things I would want to try that I don't wait and I just get the color camera and just shoot I keep shooting black and white with it, but then I have that flexibility all of a sudden of like, if something looks good in color, I'll just shoot it for color and then we'll see what I do with it later. So there were a few stints of maybe 6 months or a year where I was like, I have the old monochrome, but the new camera is so compelling. I'm just going to start shooting the new camera and see what happens. And so I had in my archive, like, those stints of color. They were mostly for black and white shooting, but every now and then I'm like, oh, this would look great in color, and I just would shoot it for color. The idea was like, wait a second, I could do this to re-energize my creativity in Venice and challenge myself. I could shoot color for the foreseeable future, make it a real project, but then I could tap into those stints that I had back then. I think at some point shooting the same place for a long time, you kind of want to challenge yourself. You want to be able to see it in a new way. And there are color in Venice can be very distracting, so black and white can really help.
Yeah.
Black and white also makes it look timeless, which is really nice. But the color there also it's punchy color. You're at the beach. People are wearing like bright bathing suits, or then there's the bodybuilders with their tan, and there's some things where the color helps tell the picture to tell the story of the place, and you don't get it when you're shooting black and white.
Well, let's take a look at your images and chat about them for a bit. You've chosen three from a large archive of images, all from the Venice Beach area, and you start off with Batman waiting in line for the potty.
Yes. So this was, I mean, whenever I can find some humor in there, I will grab it. The backstory of this is there's a Muscle Beach competition that goes on 3 or 4 times a year. I forget. I think they have maybe three big events and one smaller one. All kinds of characters, and there's different age groups, and so it's very eclectic. And sometimes, not always, but this one time, a few people showed up in costumes. This one guy was dressed as Batman, and he was totally in character the whole time. He was really having fun with it. I was in the back of my head as I was shooting because this is like backstage where they prep themselves for the competition. They spray tan each other and this and that. It's much more interesting than the competition itself. I prefer staying in the back there and shooting, like being the fly on the wall when I can. And they had let me let me backstage that time. I saw the people in costume. I was like, that would be really funny if they went to the bathroom and I can sort of like show like Batman waiting for the bathroom, those kinds of candid moments. I had kind of premeditated that one, and I waited, and eventually it happened. But it was a process of like timing it right, because you had to show the bathroom, the little symbol, the men's room. It became more difficult to kind of package up that whole thing in a way that was understandable, where the story could be told than what I imagined. But I ended up getting this shot, and I was happy with it.
I just love he's just looking up, sort of waiting for, is it my turn?
Yeah, no, and then totally. And the guy in the front, you can only see his back. He looks like he would be like a villain, or like, so it's like all these, they all kind of look a little bit superhero-ish,
Yeah.
just because they're all bodybuilders. These guys are actually often they have some kind of thing that got them into bodybuilding, where they were, either they were abusing drugs or alcohol or this or that, and they had some turning point in their life where they're like, I gotta, get myself in shape and do something with my, and so they're super sweet to talk to. Like, they're all very, they tend to be kind of sensitive and just very interesting human beings. And so I just enjoy that whole crowd. And so you got this guy who looks like a villain, but he's super sweet. And it's like, and I kind of, made friends with a bunch of them as I was doing this. And so it was a great atmosphere.
Your second image now is also from Muscle Beach.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the challenges, I think, and especially with color, I like to take color to a place where not everything is deadpan. You want to show people something that they don't typically see with their eyes, or they don't observe, or they wouldn't just frame when they look at a scene, they wouldn't frame it that way with their eyes. I think the challenge with color, less so with black and white, but with color, because nobody sees in black and white, right?
Right.
So we all see in color. So I think when it comes to color, it becomes more of a challenge to show people they don't normally see, because you have to kind of detach it. You have to show people something where, like, wait, no, it's not the color you normally see with your eyes. This is new color that you haven't seen before. I'm trying to do things with color that I wouldn't normally do with black and white, such as frame in a little bit of a maybe abstract way, which, this picture is a little bit more of an abstract of bodies. It's not really shown here, but I use more slow shutter speed, because you don't see with slow shutter speed. So I try to
Right.
add all these tools to make color not look like I also like very saturated, and I don't oversaturate it. It's more like I look for the light, that will, make the color look amazing, which you don't normally see color. You don't often see color that way with your own eyes. So I try to just add all these layers to compensate for the fact that it's not black and white, where it's naturally different from what you're looking at. Now I'm having to add use all these tools to make it look, something different than just casual observation. So yeah, so in this case, I just love the color palette of it. I love that the red tarp with the red bathing suit, and the purple and the blue, and they all have these very kind of, not the kind of bathing suit you normally wear at the beach. And and they just, and they have this spray tan that, nobody would walk around in this spray tan normally. No one's that tan. So anyway, it's very sort of, unnatural, and at this, and also just the way, their bodies are built. But anyway, I like the fact that there's no faces and you're just
Yes.
looking at shapes and trying to not overlap anything, trying to detach, and even the shadows are kind of adding a little bit of layer in there. And
Your third image is also on Venice Beach, and this one is a more recent one.
yeah, so this one, I think there was a video online that I put out, where I described basically how this was shot. So if anybody's interested in digging more details about the
We'll
genesis of this story,
we'll
yeah,
we'll, we'll link to it at the end of the
perfect.
program here. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's called Bohemian Barbecue, this picture. And so this one is one that I more recently shot as I was, actually intentionally, like I was like intentionally shooting my color project. I was using a different camera also. I'm not using an M for this at this point. Because I'm also doing slow shutter speeds and things like that. So I'm using the Leica SL2S, which is more of an like a SLR type camera. It's mirrorless, but it works more like an SLR. It's not the same experience. Personally, I prefer shooting with an M, but in this case, I'm kind of like the tool it requires a different tool what I'm doing right now. So I'm shooting with that. Danielle is the character who's dancing, whose face is lit by that flame, and I had met her a while ago when I was shooting a project about people living in vehicles that ended up with my book about the Reese family in that bus,
Yes. Yeah. Right.
in that school bus. So there's a bunch of other people I was shooting at the time that didn't make the book because we decided halfway through that the Reese family was so interesting, we should just make a book about them. I had shot some photos of her and her partner at the time at the drum circle, and she's this really kind of interesting kind of bohemian character. My book was going to be about some people who do the homelessness or the van life or whatever they call it, and she's the completely by choice kind of person. But she hangs out with all the others. Obviously, they all live, on the street and so on. And she turned out to be this interesting character that I followed a little bit, and then she went away. I think she was in Hawaii for a while. I mean, she really does live the bohemian lifestyle where she just will just pop up anywhere. Venice is kind of her anchor, and so she ended up coming back to Venice a few years later, and I bumped into her again. And then one of the few times I bumped into her, she was just coming to the beach with a barbecue and with like a barbecue pit, and her and her friends were installing it by the drum circle. You see the other people in the back are facing the drum circle, so we're like right by the drum circle, but they're doing this barbecue. It kind of built up slowly to this whole thing where she was dancing and the barbecue was lit, her friend was drumming, and the sun had set, and all these things were kind of coming together. When I follow a scene like this, I shoot it until till it's gone. So either there's no light, or the people have gone home, or something, or I get kicked out if they just say, enough of the camera. But I knew that wasn't going to be the case with Danielle, because she just loves, being photographed. She kind of let me be the fly on the wall before, so I knew she was gonna, she had okayed me photographing this. So I was photographing candidly for like 45 minutes, trying to make myself discreet and letting them do their thing. In the end, this was the favorite picture, my favorite picture of this scene. There were a couple actually that I hesitated between, and sometimes I published this one, sometimes the other one. It was a great moment. It was one of those magical times, but you never knew. It's one of those things where you never knew if you had your best shot yet, so you just had to keep shooting
Keep
because
going.
more
Yeah.
better stuff could come up, and then why would you wouldn't want to leave this. So
It's beautiful, and I love the light on her face and the light and with the sun setting behind or having set. It's a lovely shot. Tell me a little bit more
thank
about
you.
the project. So, color, Venice Beach. Where does the project go from here? I assume it's a book because you've done books before. Is that not the case, or?
No, it will be. It's just not there yet. I think there's probably several years of shooting ahead of me for this one. It's not one that I shoot all year because I tend to be away in the winter. So this one is like, for some, it's more of a spring, summer kind of project. I still shoot it now in the fall whenever I can. I'll try to be there on Sundays because Sundays is really when Venice is at its peak and then when there's the most things happening. The drum circle happens on Sunday. The big drum circle happens on Sunday. Whenever I'm in LA and I can make it over the weekend, preferably on Sunday, I will go. But you can imagine, like, often I'll go and I won't get a single shot that I like.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll go and I'll get a couple shots that I like, but it takes a long time for this to build up to having enough for a book. I mean, typically, I feel comfortable looking at images, trying to edit for a book if I have maybe 250 keepers, like
Yeah.
images
Right.
that I really like. And then we'll take those 250 and I'll boil them down to 100, 110. Then I'll work with an editor and we'll take them down to like 65 or so. To shoot 250 images that I like, you can imagine, like if it's only on Sundays or Saturdays, and it has to be over many years. Long answer to your short question, but I probably have another couple of years of this. Yeah.
Well, these things take time, as they say, having had the pleasure of being in Venice Beach, listening to you talk about it, I spent 2 hours there and shot the roller skaters who were sort
Yes,
of rolling
that's
around their
another
pit, and then
great.
I also
Yes.
just off of the Muscle Beach where they do their lifting, there were some acrobats who were working on a trapeze of some
Yes.
sort, and I spent some time
Uh-huh.
taking pictures with them.
In the sand
And
pit. Yeah.
yes, exactly. And I just remember thinking, there is everywhere you look, there's something. I understand, not getting something every time you go, but there's always something that is that's interesting to look at wherever you are. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing the book.
Usually, I mean, I like making the book. I love that stage, but that's also a little bit of a death in a way because that
Yeah.
means the project is over and no more images are going to make into it, and I'm stopping. I'm going to have to move on to another project.
Well, Dotan Saguy, such a pleasure to have you back on the Crit House talking about 3 images from your archive. Always interesting. Thanks for joining
Thank you.
us. Thank you all for watching the Crit House.